Hey friends, welcome to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Ben.
And my name is Alan.
And today we have an epic battle for you between the USS Vengeance from JJ Abrams Star Trek Into Darkness
and the First Order Resurgent class Star Destroyer, also from JJ Abrams The Force Awakens.
Yeah, they are both JJ Abrams ships, so there might be some similarities there. Well, first of all, being a die-hard Star Trek fan, I'm going to give you a little bit of a rundown of the USS Vengeance and some of its stats and capabilities. So it's operated by Section 31. They're kind of like a clandestine, secret sort of...
like CIA or even
like
more like the Bourne Identity guys.
Let's just say I belong to another branch, Starfleet Intelligence. Our official designation is Section 31. Never heard of it. We keep a low profile. Works out better that way for all concerned.
So Section 31, it's run by Section 31. It's a black ship. You can see there the hull is all black. There are no markings on it.
Right.
It's Dreadnought class, so it's a Dreadnought class battle cruiser.
Yeah.
It has a very low minimum crew. It can basically be operated by one person.
Okay.
But when we see it in the movie operated by Admiral Marcus, you know, there's about 5 or 6 people on the bridge. We see one other crew member, a security officer in a cargo bay, but that's pretty much all we see. So we'll say in this scenario, it's got a reasonably small crew.
Okay.
It's 1,450 meters in length.
Pretty long, like almost like a Star Destroyer, Imperial class Star Destroyer.
Exactly,
Yeah.
which are 1,600. So same length almost as a Star Destroyer, and that's double the length of the Enterprise in those movies. It has advanced weapons, advanced phasers, could fire while at warp, could knock other ships out of warp, and it had advanced photon torpedo. So now what do you have on the Resurgent class?
So the Resurgent class is basically, I guess, the accumulation of years of Imperial failures at the hands of the Rebels. They basically learned from the mistakes of the Imperial class Star Destroyer, which was a great ship, but it had a lot of issues. And it's about twice as long at 3,000, 3,000 meters.
Okay.
It has, the crazy thing about the ship is that it has 1,500 turbo lasers.
Wow.
Which is just kind of a ridiculous amount of weaponry. I mean, it's mainly used for orbital bombardments, but it's also used for capital ship fighting. It's a little more accurate than previous generation Star Destroyer turbo lasers. It has Kyber crystals, which help focus the targeting system.
I see.
So it is a little better. There's also a small complement of fighters on board, about 2 wings of TIE fighters.
But it's still kind of like suitable for that kind of broadside,
yeah,
ancient
I mean,
galleon style fighting, right?
in a way, but also because it is a triangular shape. The triangular shape allows the turbo lasers on the forward deck to kind of operate at different angles. So it is actually kind of efficient. I mean, you can get a decent amount of
It doesn't just
turbo
shoot
lasers
from the side.
Yeah, that's more of the Clone Wars era with the
Or
with
the
the Venator
Master and Commander
the
era.
Master and Commander, right? So the other thing that people might not necessarily know about the ship is that because of Snoke's strategy of basically keeping all of their forces mobile, they didn't really have land bases so much as they used their ships as operating bases for their ground troops. So, for instance, the Resurgent class, a ship called Absolution, was actually one of their main training ships. So you had, you know, maybe 70,000 crew, 8,000 stormtroopers, but you also had thousands of cadets. So.
And so this ship, this finalizer, how many is this? This has got 8,000, right?
So I think it was 55 enlisted, 19,000 officers, and 8,000 stormtroopers. So it's very hard to take over the ship by brute force. It's just filled with guys with guns.
Okay, so let's now get into scenarios. So we're going to say, for the purpose of this scenario, for some reason, the finalizer gets sucked up into a wormhole and ends up at Earth.
There's a lot of wormholes in the unknown region.
Yes,
So-
you never know what could happen.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm guessing the finalizer would probably, like, Earth is not going to be defended by. There's going to be not too many giant ships orbiting Earth, right? I mean, they'd be spread out along the asteroid belt. Maybe Jupiter.
Well,
you have some.
there's one space dock, but it's unarmed. Due
It's
to
unarmed.
some kind of special treaty, it's not armed. It's already within the Mars defense barrier, which was kind of like a defense barrier of unmanned like pods that kind of make a perimeter.
I see.
And so it's already past their, you know, exterior line of defense.
Okay.
And so it's kind of taking the Federation off guard there.
So I'm guessing Earth Command would hail the Star Destroyer. Star Destroyer would probably like, screw you guys, fire upon whatever orbiting station we have. Basically cause a lot of devastation with its 1,500 turbo lasers.
Yeah. So they would probably destroy that Earth space dock.
Yeah.
And they would probably be met with a little bit of resistance by perhaps an Excelsior-class starship or a Constitution-class starship.
Right.
But I think they would probably destroy those pretty easily, just because of how heavily armed they are. So Starfleet turns to Section 31, and Admiral Marcus, who thinks he's like the man, dispatches himself in the USS Vengeance from the orbital facility around Jupiter, which is where it was being built and stored secretly. Okay, so Admiral Marcus would come out of warp in the Vengeance, guns blazing.
Right.
And obviously he would be met with some resistance from the Resurgent class, firing those 15,000 turbo lasers, 1,500 turbo lasers.
Right, I think the strategy here for the finalizer is just to close into a distance where their turbo lasers are effective, because turbo lasers aren't really lasers, they fire projectiles, plasma, molten plasma, so it does take a while for these projectiles to reach their target. So, and also, as we saw in the recent Last Jedi, maybe for some reason the projectiles decrease in power over long ranges. So it's all about getting in close and fighting other ships and basically overpowering the shields.
So I think what Admiral Marcus would do, he would realize that the Finalizer was a bit less maneuverable than the Vengeance.
Right.
Just because it is a sort of big, solid ship. The Vengeance is much more sleek, smaller ship, and I think it would be able to maneuver around the Finalizer a lot more easily. They also have the type of weapons they have move very quickly, and their targeting is all computer operated, so it's the targeting is very accurate. So I think what Admiral Marcus would do would be to keep his distance, because they would discover that
they would have seen the Finalizer destroy the ships.
They would have seen The Last Jedi. I'm sure it's in the DVD.
Well, they should have seen
it's in the DVD collection on the Enterprise in the main computer core.
It's a classic.
It's a classic.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be crazy if it was a classic by then? Anyway,
well,
so
people usually like these movies after they age.
So in all seriousness, anyway, he would realize that the weapons were weaker at distance, so he would try to keep his distance, maneuver around the ship, strategically blasting it with phasers, probably conserving his photon torpedoes for now until he really needs them. And they would start to think about how to beam some people aboard the Finalizer, I think.
Right, so the problem with beaming is you can't go through shields usually. So if a ship has its shields raised, but in Star Wars the shields actually have a refresh rate.
Their shields have a fractional refresh rate, keeps anything traveling slower than light speed from getting through.
We're making our landing approach at light speed?
So technically, if you guys were, the Star Trek crew was able to kind of figure out the formula of how to jump through the refresh rate, they could technically beam on board.
And Star Trek people are pretty good at science, you know, so they're always scanning stuff and doing that kind of stuff. So they would scan the ship, realize the shield's refreshed, and they would find a way to time it so that their transporter beam could go through. So what we would do, I think, we would, Admiral Marcus would beam some security guys onto the bridge of the Finalizer. Now,
because it's right out in the open, you can see it's the bridge,
it's like on the top, right?
Yeah, okay.
Now, remember though, what we've seen from the movie, these security guys, they're not really that well armed. They just have those handheld phasers. It's not even a full phaser rifle. It's just a hand-held one.
Okay.
And they're not really armored either. So I think once they got onto the bridge, they would, after the initial, they would have an initial chance to kill some bridge officers.
Well, generally the bridge officers aren't heavily armed. They're usually aren't stormtroopers. I don't think they're deployed on the bridge.
They're not on the bridge. But I'm guessing that the stormtroopers wouldn't be far away. They would be able to call some stormtroopers up. They'd probably take like a minute or 30 seconds to get there.
Are they bringing in a bomb though? That's the whole thing. Are they like bringing an explosive? Is this like a, or are they trying to take over the bridge?
So I think what would happen would be they would come in, they would beam in with a bomb, and they would end up getting overpowered by stormtroopers, and probably all of them would die. But the bomb was already set, and they would destroy the bridge, I think.
So at this point, what you're going to have is at least a few minutes of confusion and chaos, but because the First Order has learned from the mistakes of one Executor-class Star Destroyer during the Battle of Endor, they have a secondary bridge and auxiliary bridges built to support that bridge within the middle of the ship, and this is going to be a little harder to locate, but so there will be maybe a 1 minute gap where the Vengeance will be able to really kind of pummel the Star Trek, but they will regain control of the ship pretty quickly. And at this point, I think the idea for the Finalizer is they're going to realize that their turbo lasers, although some of the turbo laser shots will hit the Vengeance, the range is too far, and it's moving too fast. So what they really need to do is close the range, close the distance between the two ships, and try to basically chase the Vengeance.
Yes. Now, you could say, why don't they just beam onto the secondary bridge? Well, there's a couple of reasons I think that they would reinforce the secondary bridge with a lot of stormtroopers guarding it.
Right.
But also I'm thinking that since we know the hull of the Resurgent class is actually armored, I'm guessing this material might be tough for a transporter beam to penetrate.
We can't make transporter contact, sir. The entire system's inhibited.
So we probably wouldn't try beaming again. I think at this point, you've got the Resurgent class is trying to close the distance. I think Admiral Marcus would resort to his photon torpedoes now, bring those out, and the firing cannons for the photon torpedoes actually on the surface of the ship. They kind of come out on arms, very similar to those missile launchers.
Right, the concussion missile launchers.
JJ Abrams stuff, you know. So we would fire photons at you guys, and you would probably get pretty overpowered by that.
So we might be able to hit a few of them, but eventually those photon torpedoes will do a lot of damage. And the problem is, again, our torpedoes, I mean, our turbo lasers aren't doing enough damage to the Vengeance. I think at this point, if the damage starts overpowering the shields, we're going to have issues. We're going to need to at least jump away from the system to assess the damage, maybe think of a new strategy. So at this point, I think we jump into hyperspace.
Okay, so you jump to hyperspace. You wouldn't be able to do a jump that far away because
we haven't mapped the system, so we don't know which way is safe. So it would be within the range of long-range sensors, you know. So
which
maybe
could still be quite far.
Could be a few light years, but it's definitely not going to be extremely far away. Yeah.
Now, when you jump to hyperspace, the crew of the Vengeance will be like, "Whoa, what happened?" They just disappeared from sensors because hyperspace is actually like going into another dimension, the hyperspace dimension. So. We would discover you disappeared from sensors for like a minute or so, and then you pop up several light years away. But we would realize, wow, you know, because hyperspace is faster than Star Trek's warp, definitely. And we'll give you an example of that, you know, just from crossing the galaxy, you can cross it in like a week or two.
Yes.
But in Star Trek, it's like 75 years to cross the galaxy.
Yeah.
So you would be a few light years away. It would probably take us like at least an hour or two to get to where you are. To your position. So the Vengeance wouldn't pursue you at this point because you're too far away. It would take like an hour or two to get to your position. They would probably call on other starships
to reinforce,
to you. To kind of converge on your system, on your position. And you would start seeing that on scanners, several ships converging on you.
Right.
So what would you guys do next?
Well, I think the realization is that, wow, hyperspace travels a lot faster than whatever technology that this your universe has. So we're going to use the advantage of singling out the biggest threat in the system, which would be the Vengeance class. I mean, all the other ships are not going to be the same size. So we would probably, after repairing doing any structural repairs, making sure that the shields are fully charged, we would come back and attack Earth once again.
Okay, and attack the Vengeance, right?
Yeah. So the strategy here is, you know, I think getting close to the Vengeance is something that we'll definitely try much better at. So in the beginning, maybe we'll come into system, and the Vengeance will still try to maintain its distance, start firing photon torpedoes, start damaging our ships. But then we're going to do something that's known as a micro space jump, and this is something that Thrawn would actually do from time to time.
Has this been done before?
This has been done by Thrawn. Thrawn was a tactical genius. I don't know why they don't do this more in Star Wars. But anyway, essentially, micro jump is exactly what it is. It's a jump within systems. Like, it could be a very short jump.
Okay.
So this would negate any sublight
Just
speed.
a few thousand kilometers.
Few thousand kilometers, as just enough to get in front of the Vengeance, essentially, surprise it, and then fire, you know, the full complement of turbo lasers into the Vengeance.
Okay.
Probably would destroy it.
And I think, yes, I'm going to have to give this one to you, Alan, because I think that strategy would definitely work. And since you have those 15,000 turbo lasers, I think 1,500, I think you probably would be able to overpower the Vengeance's shields. In the end, I think we would get destroyed, and the Vengeance would fall into Earth's atmosphere conveniently, exactly on top of Starfleet headquarters.
Yeah, and I think the First Order would basically see that Earth is full of humans, and you know, we love humans. You know,
you do, yeah, you do.
So humanity
first.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, get the T-shirt.
So
all right.
Just be peace on Earth.
All right, guys. So there you have it. I'm sorry, Star Trek fans, but we do have to give this one to the First Order. I think they probably would win just the sheer brute force of that ship compared to the Vengeance, which for a Star Trek ship is pretty full on, but not quite the same as.
It's also the hyperdrive. The hyperdrive speed.
Hyperdrive.
If they're smart enough to use a micro jump, you can't defeat that.
Can't defeat it. Like when the Discovery jumped around that Klingon ship in the new series. But anyway, that's another spore drive. It's basically a hyperdrive. But anyway, so guys, that's our video for today. Please leave a comment. Who do you think would win in this match? And do you agree with our appraisal of how the finalizer would win? I'd love to see your comments. As always, please subscribe for several Star Wars, Star Trek, and science fiction videos every week. We'll see you next time. Oh, and if you're watching this,
you are Generation Tech.